Hi, this is Imari from the Always Uttori blog, where we empower you to bring enchantment into your life through fashion, food, DIYs, and lifestyle content. Looking to add a little mystery and magic to your holiday decor this season? Embrace the bold drama of Goth Rococo, where feminine meets Gothic intrigue. Today, we're diving into the 2024 holiday season with DIYs inspired by our Goth Rococo color theme. This style blends the ornate, elegant femininity of Rococo with the moody allure of Gothic and Victorian design. If you missed our Jumpstart Christmas 2024 video and want to dive deeper into the color theme, be sure to check out the link in the description box below. We have plenty of fun DIYs to share today, so let's get started and create some enchantment. The first DIY is a cameo ornament. Cameos, or carved profile portraits, were typically used to decorate jewelry during the Rococo era. To create these ornaments, you'll need a picture frame mold and hot glue. I'm using hot glue instead of clay because it's more durable. It won't break if it falls off the tree and it molds well to the intricate designs. For the mold, there are many picture frame options available on Amazon. The one I'm using has 2 different sizes, but feel free to choose any shape or size you like. I'll link a similar mold in the description box below. Start by filling the mold to the top with hot glue. You can gently tap the mold on the table to ensure the glue settles into all the details of the mold and to help air bubbles rise to the top. Double check for any missed spots, and if needed, add more glue. Let it cool and dry completely before removing it from the mold. Next, we'll cast some floral designs using the IOD Felicity mold, which will go inside the frames. I also cast 2 cameo pieces, one Afro-style cameo and one panel with a cameo in the center. You can find a variety of cameos on Amazon and Etsy, including the Afro-style cameo I'm using. Since I have 2 frame sizes, I paired the larger cameo panel and a large flower with the bigger frame, and the smaller flower and the African cameo with the smaller frame. Once you've cast your pieces, trim any excess glue with scissors. If there are any gaps or parts that weren't filled in all the way, you can add a bit more glue to fix it. Now let's move on to the painting. Start by painting the back of the frames black with acrylic paint. This gives the ornaments a polished look and helps the other colors to pop later. I cast 20 frames, 10 large and 10 small, and decided to paint half of them blue and the other half pink. For the pink frames, I recommend painting the back white instead of black as I did, because the black made the pink color look dark, so I had to do a few more coats of pink for it to look bright. If you want the ornaments to be uniform, you could paint the back black after painting it white, but I think the pink color just looks better with the white background to bounce off of. I also painted the backs of the cameos black even though they won't be visible. I think it makes the top color stand out more on the transparent glue. Since we're working with the Goth Rococo theme, I chose to paint some of the cameos completely black to incorporate the darker tones into our color story. Feel free to decide how many to paint black, pink, or blue. It's all up to your preference. While the cameos dry, start painting the frames. I used Folk Art's French blue and baby pink colors. You can dilute the paint with water to help it get into the frame's intricate details better. While those dried, I painted the remaining cameos blue and pink. Returning to the frames, when they were dry, I used a gold leaf pen to highlight the edges of the frames and add gold to the raised parts of the front of the frame. As mentioned in our Jumpstart Christmas video, chinoiserie was popular during the Rococo era, so I'm incorporating it with some chinoiserie print napkins and tissue paper. I found blue chinoiserie napkins on Amazon and red chinoiserie tissue paper from Temu. To apply the napkin, remove any extra layers so that the design is on a single layer. Place the napkin inside the frame and measure how much you'll need. Cut off the excess, but don't trim too closely just yet. Apply Mod Podge or glue to the back of the frame and carefully adhere the napkin using the back of a paintbrush or your finger. Trim any overhang with scissors or an X-Acto knife, and patch any tears or holes with extra napkin pieces. For the pink frames, I used tissue paper, but because it was thin, I had to apply 2 layers for a more solid look. Glue the back of the frame, then add a layer of paper, add more glue, and then adhere the top layer of tissue paper. Let everything dry. Next, I added some aging and gold highlights to the cameos. You don't have to do this, but I think it helps the details of the cameos to pop a bit more. It's up to you how much you want to do, and I changed what I did depending on the design, as each cameo needed to be highlighted in different ways. I added gold to the high points of the cameos with the gold leaf pen. I also added some brown wax to give the colorful cameos a more aged feel. To use the wax, wipe on with a napkin or brush, then rub away some of the excess. I used both a napkin and a brush to blend the wax into the cameos. For the afro cameo, I added some white around the head so she would pop in the frame a bit more. For the floral pieces, I added brown wax to give it more dimension. Once the cameos are finished, glue them to the back of the frames using Mod Podge or hot glue. Lastly, cut a 6-inch length of black velvet ribbon and glue it to the back of each ornament for hanging. Let everything dry, and you're done. These ornaments do take some time with all the casting and painting, but I think they look stunning and are some of my favorite ornaments I've made. The next DIY is inspired by an image I found on Pinterest. The decoration on this ornament really gave me Rococo vibes. At first, I thought I'd try hand placing individual pearls on an ornament, but then I found some gemstone stickers at Dollar Tree, which made the process so much easier. I had a lot of pink and mauve colored shatterproof ornaments, so I used those as my base. For the first ornament, I simply wrapped the gemstone sticker around the middle. The sticker was sticky enough that I didn't need glue, but if you want it to be extra secure, a little hot glue can help. On a few of my ornaments, the end of the sticker came undone once or twice, but they usually stuck back down. Hot glue would prevent this from happening. Since the ornament is round, the sticker might not line up perfectly. Just do your best. My stickers were a bit longer than the circumference of the ornament, so I used scissors to trim off the excess. For the next set, I used more gemstone stickers from Dollar Tree. I applied them along the natural seam of the ornament, placing 4 evenly spaced lines around it. It still felt like it needed something extra. I had some gemstone trim lying around and thought it would complement the look. I measured the length and cut 4 pieces to fit between the stickers. I tried using hot glue, but it dried too quickly and made positioning tricky, so I switched to Mod Podge. It dried fast enough to hold the gems in place, but still gave me enough time to arrange them perfectly. For the final set of pink ornaments, I cast a bunch of bows using hot glue. After experimenting with different sizes, I decided to go with larger bows. I painted them pink and used hot glue to attach them to the top of each ornament. This part was a bit tricky. I had to secure the bottom of the bow to the top of the ornament and attach the back to the ornament topper. If you get glue in the wrong spot, don't worry, it's pretty easy to peel off once it cools. Even though this was a cheap, quick, and easy project, I think these ornaments turned out looking really high-end. The next project was one I did more on a whim. I had some old gold ornaments around, so I gave them a quick paint with a less brassy shade of gold. Painting ornaments can be a bit tricky, and some of mine rolled around while drying, so they aren't perfect, but from far away you can't really tell. I used the extra bows I cast from the last project and attached them to the front of the ornaments with hot glue. By the way, if you were wondering, bows are often associated with the Rococo era because they were often used to adorn fashion of the time. At first they were used to only decorate the neckline of dresses, but soon as Rococo fashion became more ornate, bows adorned the entire front of a dress. This is a great and easy way to dress up ornaments you already have and to give them a new life. I found these bells on Pinterest and thought they would be perfect for our Rococo-themed Christmas tree. I had 5 bells that I'm pretty sure I picked up from Dollar Tree a few years ago. To start, I gave them 2 coats of folk art acrylic paint in French blue. Next, I cast a few cameos using hot glue, 1 for each side of the bells, so I needed 10 in total. I chose hot glue for the cameos to capture all the fine details, but you could also use air-dry clay. After the glue dried, but was still slightly flexible, I removed the cameos from the mold and pressed them onto the bells to mold the glue to the bell's shape. I also cast scrolls and finials in air-dry clay. Since clay is more delicate, I found that using the mold with cornstarch and carefully demolding the clay onto the bell worked best. I forgot to add glue to the clay castings, which caused some finials to crack and fall off, so don't forget to brush a thinned out glue solution onto the area before placing the clay. To fix my mistake, I had to add a layer of glue over the dried clay to secure everything. Let the clay dry overnight. Once the finials were fully attached and dry, I painted them to match the bells. Next, I spray painted the cameos I cast black, then once dry, I painted them gold. After that, I glued the cameos to either side of each bell. You can cover any visible hot glue with additional paint. With the cameos in place, I brushed a light coat of gold onto the raised details of the finials. I wanted a faded vintage look, so I wiped some of the gold off with a damp paper towel and added a light layer of blue paint on top to tone it down. To top off the bells, I made bows using a wired metallic rose gold ribbon from Target. To make the bow, I cut a 24-inch piece of ribbon, created 2 loops, and loosely tied them together. After fluffing the bow, I folded the ribbon tails in half and cut them diagonally to create a ducktail effect. I also ran a lighter briefly over the ribbon ends to prevent fraying. Be careful when doing this and make sure your ribbon is polyester so it won't burn. For hanging, I took an 8-inch length of wire, threaded it through the top of each bell, twisted the ends together, and tucked them inside. Finally, I hot glued the bow on top, ensuring the wire was still accessible for hanging. Repeat this process for all the bells. These are another one of my favorite ornaments. I think they turned out so well and really make a statement. Our next project is a floral garland and tree topper. I got these pink baby's breath flowers from Amazon, but the color was a bit too bright for the theme. I toned them down by spray painting them with a lighter shade of pink. I did a few coats, turning the flowers over and trying to get the nooks and crannies of the flowers. After the flowers dried, I strung them into a garland. I started by wrapping a few flower bundles together with craft wire. I gradually added more flowers, overlapping them and securing each new addition with wire as I worked my way down. Space the flowers so there aren't large gaps or holes. You can wrap the wire around each new addition a few times to secure. Continue this process until all the flowers are used. It goes pretty quickly once you get the hang of it, and I'd say it took me about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. My garland ended up being about 3 to 4 feet long. When you reach the end, wrap the wire several times around to secure the flowers in place. After finishing the garland, I felt it needed a little something extra, so I glued 4 foam flowers from Amazon onto it for added dimension. While I'll be placing this floral garland in the tree, it would also look great draped over a mantle or used as a table runner. For the tree topper, I spray painted a reed from an old floral arrangement gold. I also had some peony napkin rings with large blooms, which I hadn't used for anything yet, and they turned out to be perfect for this project. The rings made them easy to attach to the tree. I wired one of the napkin rings to the gold stick with craft wire about midway up the branch. The idea is to create a cascading effect with the flowers leading down into the floral garland. While I didn't intend it to be, this project ended up being a major focal point of the tree and added the over-the-top element a Rococo theme needs. If you're enjoying the video so far, please take a moment to give it a like. And if you're loving it, consider subscribing so you don't miss how all these DIYs come together in our upcoming Et La Mystique Christmas vignette. Our next project is a decorative set of books that's perfect for bringing a Rococo feel to your bookshelf or any other area of your home. As a book lover, I don't usually like crafting with books since I believe they hold value. But for this project, I used books with outdated information, like these old business books, including one on Y2K crisis management. They had nice hard covers and were about the same size, so they were perfect for this project. I started by painting all the books with white chalk paint. This gives us a uniform base, which is important because we'll be covering the books with the same chinoiserie napkins used in the Cameo Ornament project. The paint doesn't need to be perfect, but you should apply enough so the book's original color doesn't show through the napkin. Once the paint was dry, I removed the extra layers from the chinoiserie napkins, leaving just the sheet with the pattern. Since the napkins weren't large enough to cover the whole book, I cut them into sections and lined up the patterns. My napkins had a white border around the print, so I trimmed that off as well. Depending on the napkins you use, this step may vary. You could also use fabric or tissue paper instead of napkins if you prefer. To apply the napkin, I lined it up so part of it overlapped the edges of the book, allowing me to tuck it inside the cover. I applied Mod Podge under the napkin, working in sections and smoothing it out with a brayer as I moved across the book. Afterward, I applied a thin coat of Mod Podge over the napkin to seal it. I also added glue to the spine and pressed the napkin in place. Then I added glue to the inside cover and made sure the napkin wrapped around to the inside of the book. For the back of the book, I initially didn't like how the napkin overlapped from the front, so I decided to remove it and start fresh. This step is up to you. How you match and align the pattern depends on the napkin you use. I glued down the back and secured the napkin to the inside back cover before trimming the excess. Then I painted a thin coat of Mod Podge on top to seal the napkin. I followed the same process for the other 2 books, making sure everything was dry before moving on. Next, I cast a few finial molds and other decorative shapes using hot glue. Once they were set, I spray painted them black, followed by a coat of gold. For a bit of character, I distressed the crown mold with brown wax before attaching it to the front of the first book. I plan to keep these books stacked, but if you'd prefer to display them individually, you can decorate the front of each book with different designs, like cameos or more finials. If you plan to stand the books upright, you may also want to decorate the back of the last book. But since I'll be keeping mine stacked, I left the back plain so the books would lay flat. I attached the crown to the front of the first book using hot glue. For the spine decorations, I experimented with different ideas. At first I thought I'd add a bee or bow below the finial, but I later decided it would look better attached to the finial itself. I glued the finial to the spine with hot glue. The gold wasn't standing out enough against the chinoiserie pattern, so I painted the spine white to make the design pop more. The spine was slightly curved, which left some gaps between it and the finial, so I added a bit more hot glue on the sides to fill in the space. Then used a gold leaf pen to blend it in with the finial. For the remaining books, I painted the spines white and attached the finials. I chose 2 bee decorations and 1 leftover pink bow from my ornament crafts. The bow will go on the center book in the stack. Some of the finials didn't reach the full length of the book, so I painted a little gold at the top and bottom to create a seamless look. I added some brown wax to age the spines a little bit and add some depth. Finally, I wrapped a black velvet ribbon around the book stack to add a Gothic touch and to keep the books connected. These decorative books are versatile. They work well in a variety of spaces and can easily transcend the holidays. They'll look great year-round. This next project was inspired by a picture I saw in Temu and a craft by the Provincial Farmhouse here on YouTube. She made some beautiful ornaments out of picture frames that looked like frosted windows. Since our theme is Goth Rococo, I wanted to bring in a touch of Gothic by incorporating spooky black candles and the feeling of peeking into a window on a winter's night. I thrifted a wooden frame that was deep enough to fit a candle inside. After removing the picture, I measured a piece of acetate to fit the frame, which was about 11 inches long and 8 inches wide. I spray painted the acetate with mirror spray paint to give it a reflective look. The hardest part was working with the rolled acetate. It kept curling, so I pinned it down by the corners while painting. The corners didn't end up fully painted, but that's okay because they won't be visible once it's in the frame. After the mirror coat dried, I added a coat of matte black spray paint on the back to enhance the reflection of the mirror effect. I attached the acetate to the bottom of the frame using glue dots, but you could also use glue if you prefer. I added another glue dot about halfway up the frame to keep the acetate secure, but I left the top loose so we can open it later to place a battery-operated candle inside. To make it easy to open, I used Velcro sticky tabs to secure the top of the acetate to the frame. Initially, I placed the Velcro on what I thought would be the bottom, but it made the frame unstable, so I reoriented the frame and moved the Velcro later on. The acetate roll I used was just wide enough to fit the frame, but I wanted a bit of overlap onto the frame so that it had something to attach to. I ended up cutting and painting an extra piece to cover the side that was just a bit short. Depending on the size of your frame and acetate, you might not have this issue. For my project, I don't think the extension was noticeable. After attaching the extender piece with glue dots, I trimmed the excess acetate from the side. I measured another length of acetate to go on the front of the window. I glued it to the inside of the frame with hot glue. For decoration, I cast a few shapes using hot glue and molds. I used an IOD mold to cast a Christmas tree and some pine corner pieces, and 2 different Prima molds to cast a Santa sleigh and a floral motif for the top of the window. I also cast a few extra pieces in case I wanted to add more details. After everything dried, I painted all the pieces black and then gold. Next, I dry fit the arrangement of the decorations to see what worked best. I also considered painting the frame blue, but I decided to leave it in its natural wood for a more classic look. Once I arranged things to my liking, I used hot glue to secure the pieces. I placed the tree and star on one side, positioned the sleigh in front, and hung bells from the garland corner pieces. This is where you can get creative. Play with layering to add depth. And don't be afraid to go all out. Rococo is known for its extravagance. To add a frosted effect to the window, I watered down some white paint and mixed in a bit of glitter for texture. I painted the corners of the acetate to mimic the look of snow using organic round shapes for a natural snowy effect. Finally, I fixed the Velcro placement, moving it to the back of the frame so it wouldn't affect how the frame stands. This allows you to open the window easily and place a battery-operated candle inside. I got these candles from Amazon during one of their Prime Day sales. To keep the candle secure, I used sticky tape at the bottom, which makes it easy to take the candle out when needed. The candles I used did come with a remote, so I don't have to open the frame every time, but I thought it was important to include that feature so that batteries could be changed and so on. Now that we've created our Gothic-inspired candle display, I'm curious, what kinds of decor do you love to mix into your holiday theme? Are you more into the classic traditional look, or do you like to add a unique twist like our Goth Rococo theme? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we've got a floral arrangement. I was inspired by a beautiful piece I saw on Pinterest and thought it would go well with our Rococo theme. I started with a French-style urn that I thrifted last year. To build the base, I placed floral foam in the bottom of the urn and cut it to fit the shape. I also inserted a skewer in the center of the foam to help secure the 3 pieces together. If you want this arrangement to be more permanent, you could glue the floral foam to the urn. Since I didn't want mine to be permanent, I kept it as is, and though it shifted a little as I worked, it wasn't too troublesome. This project is probably the most expensive project we're sharing because flowers are pricey. Luckily, I found all these florals during a half-off sale at Joann Fabrics back in July. I got enough for this arrangement and the wreath we'll be sharing later, all for about $60. Without the sale, the total would have been closer to $150, so keep an eye out for sales to save big. Even though florals can be expensive, they're essential to achieving that luxurious Rococo feel, and I think this arrangement really brings the theme to life. When arranging the flowers, I used the Pinterest image as inspiration, focusing on its asymmetrical shape and height. I stuck to our color palette of pink and blue with a few pops of purple for contrast. Arranging flowers is really about intuition. Don't hesitate to move things around until it feels right. The key is to avoid gaps while maintaining balance with varying textures and movement. Even though this arrangement is asymmetrical, it has a curve that draws the eye and feels balanced, with flowers spilling over on both sides. I also included a few unique blooms like a blue rose and a purple allium, which add extra texture and interest. Interestingly, Rococo as an art movement embraced asymmetry. While the style is known for its ornate and lavish details, it also celebrates nature through motifs like fish, shells, and leaves, elements that naturally have curved and often asymmetrical shapes. S and C shapes are especially common in Rococo design and architecture, making this flowing asymmetrical look a hallmark of the style. I didn't have quite enough flowers to complete the back of this arrangement. If you wanted this to be a centerpiece on a dining table, both sides would need to be completed. For me, I will be placing this against a wall so the backside won't be seen. Next, I'm creating decorative chairbacks for the dining room chairs I'll be using. I picked up some 5x7 frames from Dollar Tree and painted them in the folk art color French blue. The frames had a gold trim, so I tried to preserve that and wiped off any paint that got on the gold areas. I didn't film this part, but I cast several finials using hot glue, 4 corner pieces and 4 long ones to go inside the frames. After casting, I spray painted them black, followed by a coat of gold. Once dry, I attached the finials inside the frames with hot glue. For the images, I used AI to create Rococo-style girls, which I printed and cut out to fit inside the frames. If you like these images, I'll be offering them as free downloads on my website, and I'll link that in the description box below. Now onto the chair hangers. To make these, I used thick craft wire and measured how long I wanted them based on my chair. You can customize this for your own chairs. For mine, the total length was around 10 inches with about 7 inches from the bottom of the loop. I cut 4 pieces of wire to the same length. To protect both the ribbon and my fabric chairs, I used pliers to create loops on both ends of the wire, so nothing would poke through. Next, I took blue satin ribbon and covered the wire by gluing the ends of the ribbon down. I added a little glue along the wire as well so the wire wouldn't shift around inside the ribbon. I wrapped the ribbon over the wire, leaving a bit extra to create a neat seam, and glued the edges down. I then attached both ends of the ribbon together with hot glue, securing them in place. After that, I bent the wire to form the hook for the chair. For the finishing touch, I added a bow to the top of the frame. I used the same blue satin ribbon, cutting a piece about 10 inches long to create 2 loops across the top of the frame. I secured the loops in the center with craft wire and trimmed the excess. Then I folded another piece of ribbon, wrapped it around the center of the bow, cut off the excess, then attached it to the bow with hot glue. To assemble, I attached the chair hook to the back of the frame with hot glue, then glued the bow to the top of the frame and to the hook for extra security. These chairbacks add a whimsical touch, and the way the ribbon hook works almost looks like magic. They really tie the Rococo theme together with a playful, elegant feel. Next, we're making plates for our table setting. I'm using picture frames that I got from Dollar Tree to make dining plates as well as a plate topper. I'm starting with 11 by 14 frames. I removed the glass and spray painted the frames gold. For this project, I actually bought double the frames, so for a table setting of 4, I bought 8 frames because I needed 2 pieces of glass for each plate. Once the frames were dry, I measured out about 2 feet of lace trim. I already had this on hand, but you can use lace ribbon or any fabric that matches your color theme. I centered the lace between the 2 glass pieces with the ends overhanging the frame. This way, I can place the silverware on top of the lace to create an elegant dining experience. Next, I lightly distressed the gold paint on the frames using sandpaper, allowing some of the black to peek through. This step is optional, but I thought it would be a great way to incorporate black elements into the dining setting. For the next step, I took 4x4 frames and painted them with French blue. Once dry, I added gold detailing along the indented rims using a gold leaf pen. I also cast a large rose using hot glue, painted it black, and highlighted the raised areas with gold using the same gold leaf pen. To finish off the small frames, I decoupaged the backboard with some of the chinoiserie napkins, using Mod Podge to secure them. Once that dried, I attached the floral piece to the center with glue. These will sit on top of the plates as a decorative touch, but they can also double as a keepsake for guests to take home as decorative pictures. This project was inspired by an AI-generated image I created. I asked ChatGPT to come up with a Rococo wreath, and I used that as my guide for this wreath design. I started with a grapevine wreath that I thrifted. I spray painted it black, followed by gold. Next, I cast a decorative finial piece with hot glue and painted it black, then gold. This will go in the center of the wreath. In addition, I cast some laurel pieces for the sides and made another half of the finial to create a layered effect. I painted those black and gold as well. Before gluing anything down, I laid out the flowers and decorative pieces to get a feel for the arrangement. I used the remaining flowers I bought from Joann's, which makes this the second most expensive project. After adjusting the flowers to my preference, I began attaching them to the wreath with hot glue. Once the lower section of the flowers were secured, I glued the finial topper to the wreath, wrapping the bottom part around the underside of the wreath for stability. Then I attached the laurel pieces behind the finial and placed heavy items on them to help hold them down while the glue set. This just helped the pieces adhere more securely. I wrapped another finial piece around the right side of the wreath and finished it off with a gold bee decoration on top. Next, I made a bow using blue satin ribbon. I measured a 10-inch tail, then made 3 loops on each side, totaling 6 loops. The full bow was about 8 inches wide. I secured the center of the bow with craft wire, cut the second tail to match the first, and folded the ribbon ends in half to create a ducktail by cutting them diagonally. To prevent the ribbon from fraying, I used a little Mod Podge on the edges. I hot glued the bow to the top of the wreath, then placed a crown decoration in the center of the bow. I also positioned the second finial piece to hang beneath the bow, as the first one got lost behind everything. The extra layer made it stand out more. Once the top section was finished, I added more flowers along the left side of the wreath. This design is asymmetrical, with more florals on the left, keeping in line with the artistic principles of Rococo. Next, I wove a beaded garland through the flowers and wreath, securing the ends with hot glue behind the blooms. I added pink pearl string beads, gluing one end up higher and the other end lower on the wreath so that it would form a cascading loop when the wreath was hung on the wall. Once the wreath was finished, I cut a length of black velvet ribbon and attached it to the back as a hanger. To add a final touch, I decided to distress the gold decorations a bit more. I applied brown wax to give them some depth, then used a gilding kit to highlight the crown and bee. I applied the glue, let it dry for 15 minutes, and then added the gold leaf. After it dried, I gently brushed off the excess. In hindsight, I would recommend doing this step before attaching the bow, as I accidentally got some wax and gold leaf on the ribbon, which was hard to remove. So if you try this for yourself, be sure to distress the decorations first. And here's the finished wreath. I hope you enjoyed our take on a Goth Rococo Christmas. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments which DIY was your favorite. I would also appreciate it if you subscribed so you don't miss out on the rest of our Goth Rococo inspired content. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, enchantment awaits. Life is just about finding it.